Good evening, I'm Lee Zurich.
And I'm John Snell. A rainy night signals another shift in the weather.
Yeah, we get started with meteorologist David Bernard for a first look at what you can expect.
Well, guys, some of the worst weather is actually occurring right now. The heaviest rain is going to be over the next couple of hours. Viper is very busy, especially on the South Shore. That's where we have most of the rain. And along the coast, we are getting a lot of thunder right now. Some of these storms are quite strong around Port Fourchon and Grand Isle, extending east into central Plaquemines Parish. And way offshore, they're even indicating some rotation. So some water spouts along the coast could be possible over the next couple of hours. But again, in the metropolitan area right now, we're seeing a huge swath of moderate rain spreading from south to north, and this is going to continue for about the next 2 hours, and then we should get some relief. You can see all of the east and west bank right now in the rain. Not torrential rain, but a steady to moderate rain. North of the lake, it's much lighter, and it looks like that's going to be the trend with the heaviest rain staying south of Lake Pontchartrain, and then it really tapers off from Franklinton to Kentwood, a little bit heavier right now along the Gulf Coast. Let's take a look at our Fox 8 forecast model. Here's the current setup. If we go forward into the overnight hours, this will take us to 1 a.m., and the rain will be moving to the east across the Gulf Coast, and that means things are going to be drying out for the rush hour. But hold on. We have cold fronts on the way, more freezes on the way in the next few days. We'll talk about that in a few minutes.
All right, David, see you in a few. The city of New Orleans says it's turned over evidence after someone made death threats to contractors hired to take down 4 Confederate-era monuments.
Ryan Nakhan shows us how those threats could mean jail time.
The effort to take down the Robert E. Lee, P.G.T. Beauregard, Jefferson Davis, and Liberty monuments out of public view turns into a war of words that include threats. In this letter to the city, the attorney for H&O Investments says his client, who was contracted to remove the monuments, received death threats if its workers finish the job. The threats caused H&O to back out.
I would guess that most of them is just talk, unfortunate talk and criminal by conveying threats. But I suspect most of the threats would be empty and people wouldn't really carrying them out. But you never know.
Still, Loyola criminologist George Kapowicz says those who made the threats could face charges. The mayor's office says it's turned over evidence to authorities after some made threats through social media, telephone, and in person.
There could be jail time, fines, a number of things like that, depending on the seriousness. It sounds like, without knowing the content of the threats and that sort of thing, it would probably be a misdemeanor, but that still carries up to a year in jail.
The company contracted to take down the Lee and other Confederate monuments says they have no political stance on the issue and they were simply just doing their job. They're one of several businesses that has a work order contract with the city of New Orleans, meaning if there's a job under a certain amount, they're contractually obligated to do it.
Somebody's going to fill that space eventually, and eventually these things are going to come down.
Michael Questmore is one of the many leading the charge for the monument's removal.
Of course, it was going to get to this point at some point, but a sickness in its final stages always shows some of the worst of its symptoms.
And even those who'd like to see the monument stay,
when I see something like that, I think of how great our country is.
Still believe death threats are taking the issue too far.
Why threaten the guy who really doesn't have anything to do with it? I mean, with the intellectual part of tearing this down.
H&O's lawyer claims the business owner got threatening calls received by his wife at their home. Now, the company also said other businesses threatened to pull out of existing contracts with the company if it removed the monuments. John?
All right, thanks, Ryan. We're now on the federal judge hearing arguments in the lawsuit to block the removal of the monuments. The courtroom was packed for the hearing as opponents pressed their case to save the 4 Confederate-era monuments. Attorneys argued the removal violates state and federal law. Federal Judge Carl Barbier did not issue a ruling today, but indicated to the plaintiffs that he was having a tough time understanding their argument.
The Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office says they've linked a man who was killed in a shootout with New Orleans police last month to a series of violent armed robberies. Kimberly Kurth has the latest.
This is the man who the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office says is to blame for 5 armed robberies and 4 attempted armed robberies in both New Orleans and on the West Bank, including 3 that were committed on the same day. In the early morning hours of December 1st, shots were fired at a McDonald's in New Orleans and another in Jefferson Parish. Just 90 minutes later, the Academy on Clearview Parkway was also fired at and robbed. Deputies now say they've linked Calvin McInnes to those crimes. Just 2 weeks after those armed robberies, McInnes died in a shootout with an NOPD police officer on Chef Mentor Highway. The Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office says shell casings recovered from the robbery crime scenes matched the 9mm that they say McInnes used to fire at the NOPD officer, as well as a 12-gauge shotgun that was found in McInnes's car.
And we're confident at this point, in conjunction with NOPD, we've put all the facts together, the method of operation used, clothing description provided by the victims, clothing that we recovered during the results of a search warrant, and a lot of other physical evidence that McInnes was responsible for the ones that occurred here in Jefferson Parish, as well as the ones that occurred in Orleans Parish.
That news came on the same day that Sheriff Newell Norman announced the lowest crime rate in Jefferson Parish since 1974. There were 27 murders in 2015. The sheriff says that's the lowest it's been since 1999. Crime was down in every category except assault. Lee.
All right, Kimberly. Donald Trump says he'll gladly accept the mantle of anger from Nikki Haley and others.
In tonight's debate, 10 Republican candidates pushed hard as they head toward the Iowa caucuses starting February 1st in 2 sessions. Mary Maloney reports.
The gloves are off.
You're worried most of all about keeping your homes and your families safe and secure. You cannot give Hillary Clinton a 3rd term.
The top 7 candidates in the Republican race stood shoulder to shoulder, hoping to convince voters why they should be the pick for president.
The good news is the next commander-in-chief is standing on this stage.
Before the primetime matchup, 3 other candidates, Carly Fiorina, Mike Huckabee, and Rick Santorum, participated in an undercard debate. Fiorina, known for her debate zingers, continued to deliver, even though she was dropped from the main stage.
Unlike another woman in this race, I actually love spending time with my husband. You cannot wait to see the debate between me and Hillary Clinton.
Others focused on the president.
We have a president who seems to be more interested in protecting the reputation and image of Islam than he is protecting us.
One candidate missing from the debates, Rand Paul, who refused to participate on the undercard stage.
I'm going to take some of Rand Paul's time here for a second.
These candidates know time is ticking for voters to make up their minds.
Citizens, it is time. We must take our country back.
You want a fighter? You want a winner? I'd appreciate your vote.
I ask for your support and your vote. Thank you.
Mary Maloney, Fox 8 News.
Also tonight, Donald Trump and Ted Cruz clashed over Cruz's citizenship. Trump admits that he brought up the issue because Cruz is doing a little better.
President Obama took his State of the Union themes on the road to Baton Rouge.
Hello, Baton Rouge! Go Tigers!
In the packed gym of McKinley High, the president praised new Democratic Governor John Bel Edwards' Medicaid expansion, calling it a bold step. Today, the Republican Party vows it will not allow the president and governor to bankrupt Louisiana through what it describes as a Medicaid expansion Ponzi scheme. Nonetheless, the president vows Louisiana will be given 3 full years of 100% federal funding.
And everybody here needs to get behind him because it's not going to be easy. You know, he's coming in a little like I came in. You know, sort of got to clean up some stuff.
The president spent most of his 90-minute town hall answering audience questions, including whether the First Lady Michelle Obama will ever run for president. His answer, an emphatic no. The mayor calls it the most transformative project for New Orleans since the Superdome. Ceremonial shovels broke ground as construction begins on a new terminal at Armstrong International. City leaders say the $826 million project will create more than 13,000 construction jobs. The new modern terminal will take shape on the north end of the airport. It will have 30 gates, a 2,000-car parking garage, and a ground transportation hub. The contract calls for completion by October of 2018.
The NOPD believes identifying a car could provide critical information in a Christmas Day murder. Investigators released this surveillance image of a dark-colored car speeding from North Broad to Orleans at the time Christopher Watson was shot to death at Broad and Bienville. Detectives say the 26-year-old victim had just left a family holiday celebration, was on his way to work at the RTA when someone gunned him down in his car.
There were at least 15 shots fired that night. We believe that someone out here saw or heard something that may help our investigation.
This was a hardworking individual on a holiday, gunned down in his car. We're just pleading for any information, any at all, to give us that call.
Here is another look at that vehicle. If you can help police, call homicide detectives or Crime Stoppers. Police also are looking for help to track down 30-year-old Alan Shorts III. He's accused of pistol whipping a woman until she lost consciousness during a fight in a parking lot on Crowder Boulevard, January 4th. Investigators say that Short pointed his gun at another woman as he drove away. He's wanted on a warrant for second-degree battery and aggravated assault with a firearm.
Prosecutors in Trung Le's Bourbon Street shooting trial enter notes deleted from his cell phone into evidence. According to our partners at NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune, NOPD forensic investigators were finally able to access the contents of Le's iPhone December 30th. Prosecutors say they found 2 messages of a confessional nature written in July of 2014 but deleted before his arrest. Writing in one, "God, please forgive your son, for he has sinned enough time to burn in hell." Le's attorney countered the notes just to indicate how deeply religious their client is. Saints GM Mickey Loomis knows his team's roster isn't perfect, but he likes the pieces that he has to work with and build on.
Juan Kincaid joins us with more on the team's next step in the offseason.
There are some expectations that come with missing the playoffs, especially in back-to-back seasons, and it begins with a roster evaluation to see which players can stay, which have played their final game in black and gold. That's where GM Mickey Loomis and head coach Sean Payton are right now in the offseason, going over the roster, figuring out where to cut and what to salvage. As Loomis said today, going forward means figuring out the must-haves, the needs, and the wants, and then figuring out the best way to get all 3.
I think that we've tried to use all 3 avenues of getting players, right? Free agency, the draft, and trades. You know, I believe in using all of them. But you know, you've got to be pretty cautious when you're going out and signing the really top, high-end, expensive free agents. You've got to be cautious. And I think we've been cautious for the most part, and yet some worked out, some haven't. So I don't know that philosophy is going to really change. Now, what changes is, hey, what resources do you have available? Because ultimately, you're going to have enough to go get one guy or one high-level guy, or you're going to get 3 mid-level guys. You know, it kind of depends upon this process that we're going to go through here.
And later in sports, of course, money talks and free agency. Loomis explains how he goes about getting what the team needs for the right price.
Thanks, Juan. While there were no jackpot winners from Louisiana in last night's Powerball drawing, the state still comes out ahead. How the money spent on lottery tickets helps schools.
Plus, see the warm reception for President Obama at a Baton Rouge lunch hotspot.
And I'm David Bernard of the Fox 8 Weather Center. It is busy on Viper tonight. Some of the heaviest rain so far this evening is moving through the metro area as we speak. I'll give you an update when we come back.